The crash. The stars twinkled brightly as the spaceship raced through the vastness of space. Inside, Captain Mark Rivers adjusted the controls, his heart beating fast with excitement. He was on a mission to explore unknown worlds. This was a chance to make history. The ship, the Explorer 7, had everything he needed: food, water, and advanced technology. But the journey was not without risks. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the cabin. Mark's heart sank. Warning, engine failure, the computer voice announced. Panic surged through him as he tried to regain control. His fingers flew over the buttons, but it was too late. The ship shook violently, throwing him against his seat. Outside the window, he saw the beautiful blue planet below. But the beauty quickly faded as the ship spiraled down, engulfed in flames. With a loud crash, the spaceship hit the ground. Sand flew everywhere, and the impact knocked Mark unconscious. Time passed, and when he finally opened his eyes, he found himself lying in the middle of a vast desert. His head throbbed, and he felt a sharp pain in his side. Slowly, he sat up and looked around. The sky was a bright orange, and the sun beat down mercilessly. "Where am I?" he wondered, scanning the horizon. The endless dunes of sand stretched out before him. He had crash-landed on a desert planet. Panic rose in his chest as he realized the ship was a wreck. Smoke billowed from the twisted metal. Mark felt a sense of dread. He was all alone. Taking a deep breath, he pushed himself to his feet. The heat hit him like a wave, and he stumbled slightly. He needed to find shelter and water. Mark glanced back at the wreckage of Explorer 7. He had to check for supplies. With a heavy heart, he walked towards the ruins. Inside the ship, it was dark and smoky. The lights flickered, and he had to cough to clear his throat. He searched the small cabin, finding a few emergency supplies: a water bottle, some food packs, and a flashlight. Relief washed over him. At least he wouldn't starve, at least for a while. But the reality of his situation hit him hard. He was stranded on an unknown planet, far from home. As he stepped out of the wreckage, the heat of the sun bore down on him again. Mark squinted at the endless sea of sand. He had to move. He began walking, unsure of where to go, but knowing he needed to find safety. Each step felt heavy, the sand shifting beneath his boots. He could feel the loneliness creeping in. It was just him against this vast, empty world. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he continued his search. The desert was silent except for the sound of the wind. Suddenly, he spotted something in the distance, a dark shape against the horizon. Hope flickered in his chest. Was it a rock formation? Maybe it was a cave or shelter. With renewed energy, Mark moved toward the shape, his heart pounding with anticipation. But as he got closer, he realized it was just an unusual pile of rocks. Disappointment washed over him. He sat down on the sand, feeling defeated. "I can't give up," he whispered to himself. "I have to keep going." Just as he was about to stand up, a sound caught his attention, a soft rustling in the sand. He turned quickly, eyes wide with curiosity. What could it be? The desert was full of mysteries, and he felt the thrill of adventure begin to spark again, pushing away the fear of being alone. Mark rose to his feet, ready to face whatever the desert had in store for him. The desert world. As the sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden light over the endless dunes, Mark took a moment to catch his breath. The vast desert stretched out before him, a sea of shimmering sand. He could feel the heat radiating from the ground, making him sweat. Yet he was determined to find shelter and water. Each step felt heavy, but he pushed on. The landscape was both beautiful and strange. The sand changed colors as the sun moved, turning from golden to deep orange. Mark watched as tiny creatures scurried across the surface, their shadows darting quickly before disappearing into the grains. "This place is alive," he thought, marveling at the unusual life around him. The wind whispered secrets, creating soft sounds that echoed in the stillness. Mark decided to head toward a nearby hill. From the top, he hoped to get a better view of the land. After climbing the steep slope, he finally reached the peak and looked out. His eyes widened with wonder. Below him lay a vast expanse of sand, but in the distance, he saw something unexpected. Dark shapes that looked like rocks or mountains. "This could be my chance," he exclaimed. With renewed hope, he started his descent, moving quickly down the hill. The sand shifted under his feet, and he stumbled but quickly regained his balance. He could hardly contain his excitement. Maybe those shapes held water or shelter. As he approached, Mark noticed that the dark shapes were indeed rocky outcrops, rising sharply from the desert floor. They looked like a small mountain range, jagged and rugged against the smooth dunes. He felt a thrill run through him. This was a good sign. Perhaps there were caves or small pools of water hidden among the rocks. When he reached the base of the rocky outcrops, Mark stopped to catch his breath. The coolness of the rocks provided a welcome relief from the heat. He searched for a way up, looking for cracks and crevices that could lead him to shelter. Climbing higher, he felt a sense of adventure return. The rocky terrain was challenging, but he enjoyed the challenge. At the top, Mark found a small cave. It was dark and cool inside, and he stepped cautiously into the shadows. The cave smelled musty, but it was a safe place to rest. He pulled out his water bottle and took a long drink, feeling the cool liquid refresh him. "I can rest here for a while," he thought, grateful for this small refuge. As he sat in the cave, he looked at the walls. They were rough, filled with strange markings and colors that he couldn't understand. What could this be? He wondered. Were these signs from other beings? The thought sent chills down his spine, but he was also curious. Maybe he was not the only one on this planet. After resting, Mark decided to explore deeper into the cave. He stood up, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. The darkness beckoned him. As he moved further inside, he found more markings on the walls, curved lines and symbols that seemed to tell a story. "This is incredible," he whispered, tracing his fingers over the cool surface. Suddenly, a noise echoed in the cave. Mark froze. The sound was faint, but it was there, like a soft rustle or a whisper. His heart raced. Was he alone? Taking a deep breath, he strained to listen, his senses heightened. The desert world outside was silent, but inside the cave, something felt alive. Mark stood still, waiting to see what would happen next. He had survived a crash, found shelter, and now he was on the brink of a new discovery. The desert world was full of secrets, and he was determined to uncover them all. A mysterious girl. As Mark explored deeper into the cave, the air grew cooler and filled with a strange energy. The walls glittered with tiny crystals that sparkled in the dim light, casting dancing shadows around him. He felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. What other secrets did this cave hold? Suddenly, he heard a soft sound, like a whisper carried by the wind. It made him pause. The noise was gentle and soothing, but it was also mysterious. "Hello," Mark called out, his voice echoing off the walls. There was no answer, just the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He took a deep breath and continued further into the darkness, guided by the strange sound. Then, out of the shadows, he saw her, a girl, unlike anyone he had ever seen before. She stood at the far end of the cave, her long hair flowing like liquid silver. Her skin glowed softly, reflecting the light from the crystals around them. Mark blinked in surprise. She looked almost otherworldly, like a vision from a dream. The girl turned to him, her large, bright eyes shining with curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice melodious and soft, yet it echoed around the cave. Mark felt a rush of emotions, wonder, fear, and excitement. He was not alone anymore. "I'm Mark," he replied, his voice slightly shaky. "I crashed here, on this planet." He gestured behind him, unsure of how to explain his situation. The girl stepped closer, and Mark noticed how gracefully she moved, as if she was gliding across the ground. "I am Lyra," she said with a warm smile. "You are not the first to come here, but you are the first human." Her words sent a shiver down Mark's spine. "Others have come?" he asked, his heart racing with questions. "Yes," Lyra replied, her expression growing serious. "But they did not stay. The desert is dangerous. Many get lost." Mark felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. He thought of how alone he had felt just hours before. "Can you help me?" he asked, hoping she would understand. "I need to find water and shelter." Lyra nodded, her smile returning. "I can guide you. Follow me." She turned and walked further into the cave, her movements graceful and light. Mark followed, feeling a sense of trust in her presence. As they walked, Lyra pointed out the crystal formations and strange markings on the walls. "These tell the stories of my people," she explained. "We are connected to the desert and its secrets." Mark listened, fascinated by her words. She spoke of ancient times and the wisdom of her ancestors. Soon, they reached a small chamber filled with a soft blue light. In the center was a pool of water, shimmering like stars on a clear night. Mark's eyes widened with joy. "Water!" he exclaimed, rushing forward. He knelt beside the pool and cupped his hands, taking a deep drink. The water was cool and refreshing, washing away the dust and fatigue from his journey. Lyra watched him with a gentle smile. "You needed this," she said, her voice calm. Mark looked up at her, feeling grateful. "Thank you, Lyra. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled back, and for a moment, they simply shared the silence, the beauty of the moment surrounding them. But as they stood together, Mark couldn't help but feel a twinge of worry. He had many questions about this strange girl and her world. Why was she here? What had happened to the others? He knew he had to learn more. "Lyra," he began, his voice steady, "what else do you know about this desert? About your people?" She looked thoughtful, her eyes reflecting the light of the water. "There is much to tell," she replied, "but we must be careful. The desert holds dangers, and it is not wise to wander too far." Mark nodded, understanding that the adventure was just beginning, and with Lyra by his side, he felt a spark of hope for what lay ahead. Learning together. After drinking from the shimmering pool, Mark felt stronger and more alive. He looked at Lyra, who was watching him with a warm smile. There was something magical about her presence, and he knew he wanted to learn more about her and the desert world around them. "Where do we go from here?" Mark asked, his curiosity bubbling over. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her silver hair glimmering in the blue light of the chamber. "There is much to show you. The desert holds many secrets," she replied. "But first, let me teach you about my people." With that, Lyra led Mark out of the cave and back into the warm desert sun. As they walked, she pointed out different plants and animals. "These plants can give you food and medicine," she explained, kneeling to touch a vibrant green plant with bright orange flowers. "They are special and can help you heal." Mark watched closely, eager to learn. He never imagined that a desert could be so full of life. Lyra showed him how to gather seeds and how to identify safe plants to eat. Mark practiced picking the flowers, careful not to harm anything. "You have a good eye," she complimented, her voice light with laughter. As they walked further, Mark noticed how Lyra moved with confidence. She seemed to know the land as if it was part of her. "How did you learn all of this?" he asked, genuinely curious. "It was passed down to me from my family. We respect the desert and all its creatures," she replied. "It is important to understand nature to survive." Mark admired her connection to the world around her. He realized that he had a lot to learn about survival, not just for himself, but also about the alien culture. "Tell me more about your people," he urged, eager to know more. Lyra paused and looked at him, her eyes shining. "We are the Zirali. We live in harmony with the desert. Our ancestors taught us to listen to the wind and read the stars," she explained. "But there are dangers too. Many come here seeking treasure, but they do not respect the land. They take without giving back. Mark felt a wave of understanding wash over him. He had seen that kind of greed before in his own world. "What happened to those who came before me?" he asked softly. Lyra's expression turned serious. Some were lost in the sands. Others took what they wanted and left. But they were never happy. "The desert punishes those who do not respect it," she said. Mark shivered at her words. He realized that he had to be careful, not just for himself, but also for the relationship he was building with Lyra and her world. As they continued their journey, they reached a small oasis, a hidden gem surrounded by palm trees and cool water. "This is a sacred place for my people," Lyra said, her voice low. "We come here to gather and celebrate." Mark felt the beauty of the oasis wash over him. He sat down by the water's edge, taking in the peaceful surroundings. "It's amazing," he said, feeling grateful for Lyra's guidance. "Would you like to learn our songs?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "They tell stories of our ancestors." Mark's heart soared at the idea. "Yes, please," he replied eagerly. Lyra began to sing, her voice soft and melodic. The songs flowed like water, each note filled with emotion and history. Mark listened closely, trying to catch the words. They sang about the stars, the desert, and the bond between her people and nature. He felt a deep connection forming, not just to her but to this new world. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Mark realized he was no longer alone. He had found a friend in Lyra, and together they were learning and growing. The desert world was vast and filled with mysteries, but with Lyra by his side, Mark felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Trouble in paradise. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the oasis. Mark and Lyra spent the afternoon learning songs, sharing stories, and enjoying the beauty of their surroundings. Mark felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since the crash. But deep down, a worry tugged at him. The desert was unpredictable, and he knew danger could lurk around any corner. As night fell, the stars twinkled brightly overhead, illuminating the oasis. Lyra and Mark sat by the water, enjoying the soft sounds of nature. Suddenly, the calm was broken by a distant rumble. Mark's heart raced as he turned to Lyra. "What was that?" he asked, a hint of fear in his voice. Lyra's expression changed. "It is the sound of danger," she said, her eyes narrowing. "We should move quickly." Mark stood up, feeling the urgency in her words. They gathered their things and made their way back toward the rocky outcrops, the place where they had first met. As they hurried through the desert, the rumbling grew louder. Mark's mind raced with questions. What kind of danger were they facing? Was it the creatures Lyra had mentioned before? The thought made his stomach twist with fear. They reached the cave and ducked inside, taking a moment to catch their breath. "What do we do now?" Mark asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked serious, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the cave crystals. "We must stay quiet and listen. The desert is full of surprises." Minutes passed, and the rumbling transformed into a series of loud crashes. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. "It sounds like something is coming," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her expression focused. "We cannot stay here. We need to find a higher place to see what is happening." Together, they climbed up to a small ledge at the back of the cave. From there, they could see the vast desert stretching out before them. Mark squinted into the distance, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A group of creatures, huge, dark, and terrifying, was charging toward the oasis. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, with sharp teeth and long, clawed limbs. "Those are the sand beasts," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "They come when they sense fear or when they are hungry." Mark's heart raced as he watched the creatures wreak havoc, knocking over trees and scaring away any wildlife in their path. "They're destroying everything," he exclaimed, panic rising in his chest. "We must protect the oasis," Lyra said firmly. "It is sacred to my people. If they reach it, they will ruin it." Mark felt a mix of fear and determination. "What can we do?" he asked, desperate to help. Lyra thought for a moment. "We need to create a distraction. If we can lure them away, we might save the oasis." Mark nodded, realizing that they had to act fast. They quickly devised a plan. Lyra led the way, using her knowledge of the desert to guide them. They gathered some rocks and dry plants, creating a small pile. "We can use fire to make smoke and noise," she explained. Mark nodded, feeling the adrenaline pumping through his veins. They quickly set up the distraction in a spot away from the oasis, lighting the plants with a small spark. Flames flickered to life, and thick smoke began to rise into the air. Mark watched nervously as the creatures paused, their attention shifting toward the smoke. "Now!" Lyra shouted, urging Mark to run. They sprinted back toward the oasis, hoping the creatures would follow the smoke. As they raced, Mark glanced back, his heart in his throat. Would their plan work? Would they be able to protect the place that had brought him so much peace? The rumbling continued, but now it was mixed with the crackling of the fire. Mark and Lyra pushed themselves harder, determined to save their home from the approaching danger. In that moment, they were united by a common goal: protecting the oasis and each other. The desert was full of dangers, but together, they felt ready to face whatever came next. Exploring the alien world. As the flames crackled and the smoke billowed into the sky, Mark and Lyra watched with bated breath. The sand beasts turned, their eyes glinting with curiosity as they approached the source of the distraction. "It's working," Mark whispered, a surge of hope filling him. Lyra smiled, her confidence returning. "Now we must explore while we can." With the beasts drawn away, they decided to venture beyond the oasis and into the alien landscape. As they walked, the desert seemed to come alive around them. The air was filled with strange sounds, chirps, rustles, and distant calls of creatures they had yet to see. "What else is out here?" Mark asked, his excitement growing. "There is much to discover," Lyra replied, leading the way. They'd walked along a winding path that led deeper into the desert, surrounded by towering rock formations that loomed like ancient giants. The colors of the rocks were vibrant, deep reds, oranges, and purples, painting the landscape in stunning hues. As they walked, Mark noticed strange plants that looked like nothing he had ever seen. One plant had long, spiky leaves that glowed faintly in the fading light. "What is this?" he asked, reaching out to touch it. "That is a glowbloom," Lyra explained. "It only blooms at night, and it attracts special creatures." Mark leaned closer, intrigued. The plant shimmered softly, and he felt a sense of wonder. Suddenly, a small creature darted out from behind a rock. It was no bigger than a rabbit, but had bright blue fur and large, curious eyes. It stopped and stared at them, twitching its nose. "It's so cute," Mark exclaimed, crouching down to get a better look. The creature tilted its head, studying him with curiosity. Lyra smiled at Mark's enthusiasm. "That's a flutterpup. They are friendly and can help us find water if we get lost." Mark laughed as the flutterpup approached him, sniffing his hand. He gently petted its soft fur, and the creature made a happy sound, wiggling its tail. "Let's keep going," Lyra suggested, leading the way again. They continued along the path, their excitement growing with each step. Mark felt like a true explorer in this strange, beautiful world. The desert held so many wonders, and he was eager to see more. As they climbed a small hill, Mark stopped to catch his breath. When he reached the top, he gasped at the view. Below them lay a vast valley filled with colorful plants and strange rock formations. The valley sparkled in the sunlight, making it look like a hidden treasure. "Wow, look at that!" he shouted, pointing excitedly. "Welcome to the Valley of Colors," Lyra said with pride. "It is a sacred place for my people, filled with life and beauty." Mark felt a sense of awe wash over him. This place was unlike anything he had ever imagined. They carefully made their way down the hill, taking in the sights and sounds of the valley. As they explored, Lyra shared more stories about the valley. "Long ago, my ancestors planted these flowers to bring joy to the desert," she explained. "Each color has a meaning: red for strength, blue for peace, and yellow for happiness." Mark listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge and connection to her world. They walked among the flowers, and Mark began to understand the importance of this place. It was not just a beautiful landscape, it was a part of Lyra's heritage and a testament to her people's respect for nature. He felt honored to be experiencing it alongside her. Suddenly, they heard a rustling noise in the bushes nearby. Mark's heart raced as he turned to look. What could that be? He asked, excitement and nervousness mingling in his chest. Lyra raised a finger to her lips, signaling him to be quiet. They both watched as the bushes parted, and out stepped a tall creature with shimmering scales and bright eyes. It was unlike anything Mark had ever seen, both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Stay close," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with curiosity. Mark felt a rush of adrenaline. The alien world was full of surprises, and he was ready to embrace them all. With Lyra by his side, he felt that they could face whatever came next together. Feelings grow. The tall creature stepped forward, its scales shimmering in the sunlight. Mark held his breath, unsure of what to expect. It had large, curious eyes that seemed to study him with equal parts interest and caution. Lyra stood beside him, her expression calm but alert. "It's a glimmer beast," she whispered, her voice steady. "They are usually harmless." Mark felt a rush of relief, but also excitement. This alien world was full of surprises, and he was eager to learn more. The glimmer beast tilted its head, almost as if it were trying to understand who they were. Lyra took a cautious step forward, her hands open and relaxed. "We mean no harm," she said softly. To Mark's amazement, the glimmer beast responded by lowering its head, allowing Lyra to reach out and touch its shimmering scales. She smiled, and Mark felt a warmth in his chest watching her interact with this magnificent creature. He wanted to be as brave as she was. Gathering his courage, he stepped closer. With gentle hands, Mark reached out and touched the glimmer beast's side. Its scales were smooth and cool under his fingers, and it let out a soft, melodic sound that resonated in the air. Mark couldn't help but smile. In that moment, he felt a deep connection, not just to the glimmer beast, but also to Lyra and this alien world they shared. "See, it's friendly," Lyra said, beaming at Mark. "The glimmer beasts are protectors of the valley. They help keep the balance of nature." Mark nodded, feeling grateful for the chance to experience such wonders. He realized he had been so focused on surviving that he hadn't truly appreciated the beauty around him until now. As they spent time with the glimmer beast, Mark felt something shift inside him. It was more than just excitement. It was a growing warmth, a feeling of belonging. Lyra's laughter echoed in his ears, and he realized how much he valued her companionship. They had faced danger together, shared stories, and learned from each other. The bond between them was strong and growing deeper. After a while, the glimmer beast moved away, returning to the valley. Mark and Lyra watched it go, a sense of wonder lingering in the air. "This place is incredible," Mark said, turning to Lyra. "I never imagined I could experience something like this." Lyra smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I'm glad you're here. You bring a new light to the valley," she replied, her voice warm. Mark felt his cheeks flush at her words. He had never thought of himself as someone who could bring light to another person's life. As they continued to explore the valley, the sun began to set, painting the sky with vibrant shades of pink and orange. They found a quiet spot on a hill, overlooking the blooming flowers below. Mark sat down, and Lyra joined him, both taking in the breathtaking view. "Sometimes I feel lonely," Mark admitted after a moment of silence. I was so far from home, and I didn't know what to expect. But now, it feels different." Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. "You're not alone anymore, Mark. You have me, and you are part of my world now." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He felt a rush of emotion, gratitude, joy, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Thank you, Lyra," he said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you." Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything seemed to shift. Mark felt his heart race as he looked into her bright, expressive eyes. The connection between them was undeniable. It was more than friendship. It was a bond that transcended their differences. Lyra smiled gently, and for the first time, Mark saw a hint of something deeper in her gaze. Was it affection? He felt a flutter in his chest as he realized that his feelings for her were growing stronger. He had come to this alien world to explore, but now he was discovering something even more precious. His heart was opening to someone special. As the sun set, painting the sky with colors that mirrored their feelings, Mark knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together, an adventure filled with discovery, friendship, and perhaps love. Facing the final challenge. The next morning, the valley was alive with sounds and colors. Mark and Lyra had decided to explore further, eager to learn more about the desert world and each other. But as they prepared to leave, a sense of unease settled over Mark. He couldn't shake the feeling that the danger from the sand beasts wasn't over yet. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her bright eyes filled with excitement. She had always seemed so confident, and Mark admired her spirit. "Yes," he replied, forcing a smile. "Let's see what else we can find." They ventured deeper into the valley, discovering more amazing plants and creatures. The glimmer beasts occasionally reappeared, keeping a watchful eye on them. Mark felt a sense of comfort knowing they were safe, at least for now. But as they moved farther away from the oasis, the air began to change. It felt heavy and still, almost as if the desert itself was holding its breath. "Lyra," Mark said, pausing to look at her. "What if the sand beasts come back?" His voice trembled slightly, revealing his worry. Lyra's expression turned serious. "We need to be prepared. If they return, we must protect the valley and each other." Just then, a loud roar echoed through the valley, shaking the ground beneath them. Mark's heart dropped. What was that? He gasped, eyes wide with fear. Lyra clenched her fists, determination shining in her eyes. "We need to find out. Stay close to me." They moved cautiously, following the sound. As they approached a rocky outcrop, they saw a group of sand beasts gathered, their eyes glowing with hunger and anger. They were larger and more ferocious than Mark had imagined, their sharp teeth glistening in the sunlight. It was clear they were ready to attack. "Mark, we must use the glimmer beasts to help us," Lyra whispered urgently. "They can drive the sand beasts away." Mark nodded, adrenaline surging through him. He felt a mix of fear and courage. This was their chance to protect the valley. "Let's call them," Lyra instructed, her voice steady. They raised their voices and began to chant the song they had learned together, a melody filled with hope and strength. As the sound echoed through the valley, the glimmer beasts appeared, drawn to the music. "Come on," Mark shouted, gesturing for the glimmer beasts to join them. The creatures responded, their shimmering scales sparkling in the sunlight. They stood tall, ready to defend their home. The sand beasts turned their attention to the glimmer beasts, sensing the shift in energy. Mark's heart raced as the two groups faced each other. This is it, he thought, bracing himself for what was to come. With a loud roar, the sand beasts charged forward, their powerful legs pounding the ground. But the glimmer beasts were ready. They moved swiftly, darting to the side, and creating a barrier between the sand beasts and the valley. The air filled with noise, roars, growls, and the sound of their feet pounding against the earth. Mark felt fear gripping him, but he remembered Lyra's words. "Stay strong. We can do this," he shouted. He moved closer to Lyra, their hands brushing together for a brief moment, and he felt a spark of strength. Lyra raised her voice, calling out to the glimmer beasts. "Push them back. Protect our home." The glimmer beasts obeyed, their bodies shimmering as they moved in perfect harmony. They worked together, using their size and speed to outmaneuver the sand beasts. Mark felt a surge of hope as he watched the glimmer beasts push back the angry creatures. They were fierce and determined, just like him and Lyra. But the sand beasts fought back, and Mark could see the struggle intensifying. "Keep singing," Lyra yelled over the noise. They continued to chant the melody, pouring their hearts into the song. As their voices rose, the glimmer beasts seemed to gain strength, their scales glowing brighter. Then, with one final push, the glimmer beasts charged at the sand beasts, sending them fleeing back into the desert. Mark let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. They had done it. The valley was safe for now. As the dust settled, Mark turned to Lyra, his heart racing. "We did it. We actually did it," he exclaimed, joy flooding his voice. She smiled widely, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Together, we can face anything," she said, her voice filled with warmth. In that moment, Mark knew their bond was stronger than ever. They had faced their final challenge and emerged victorious, ready to protect their home and continue exploring the wonders of this alien world together. Choosing a path, the sun began to rise over the valley, casting a warm golden light across the landscape. Mark and Lyra stood together on the hill, taking in the beauty of their surroundings. The air felt fresh and alive, a reminder of the adventure they had just experienced. They had faced the sand beasts and protected the valley, but now a new question loomed before them. What would come next? "Do you think the sand beasts will return?" Mark asked, glancing at Lyra. She had a thoughtful expression on her face. "They might, but we have the glimmer beasts to help us, and now we know how to protect our home." Her confidence made Mark feel a little better, but he couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. "Where do we go from here?" Mark wondered aloud. "There's still so much of this world to explore." Lyra nodded, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Yes, and I want to show you more. There are hidden caves, ancient ruins, and other valleys filled with life." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Mark felt his heart lift. But deep down, he also felt a pull towards his own world, the one he had left behind when his ship crashed. "I have to think about getting back home," he said quietly. "I miss my family and friends. They must be worried about me." Lyra's expression softened. "I understand," she replied gently. "But you have found a place here too. You are part of my world now." Mark looked at her, feeling a mix of emotions. He had never expected to form such a strong bond with someone from an alien planet. But here they were, standing together after facing challenges that had tested their strength and resolve. "What if I could do both?" Mark suggested suddenly, excitement bubbling up inside him. "What if I could help protect this valley and also find a way back home?" Lyra's eyes widened with hope. "That is a good idea. You could be a bridge between our worlds." Mark felt a spark of inspiration. "Yes, I can learn more about your people and your culture. Maybe I can find a way to communicate with my world." He had always loved exploring new places, and now he had the chance to bring his two worlds together. As they made their way back to the oasis, Mark felt a sense of purpose. He wanted to learn everything he could about Lyra and the Xyrili people. He wanted to understand their connection to the desert and their respect for nature. And most importantly, he wanted to help protect this beautiful place. When they arrived at the oasis, the glimmer beasts were waiting, watching them with curious eyes. Mark smiled, feeling grateful for their help in the recent battle. "We did it, friends," he said, reaching out to touch one of the glimmer beasts. "Thank you for being there for us." Lyra smiled at Mark, her expression filled with admiration. "You have a kind heart, Mark. Your desire to help both our worlds is what makes you special." Her words warmed him, and he felt a sense of belonging that he had not felt in a long time. They sat by the water, discussing their plans for the future. "First, I want to meet your people," Mark said eagerly. "I want to learn from them and understand their ways." Lyra nodded. "That is a great start. We can teach you our songs and stories, and you can share your own." The thought of sharing his culture with her people excited Mark. He envisioned gatherings filled with music, laughter, and new friendships. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a beautiful glow over the oasis, Mark and Lyra made a promise to each other. They would work together to protect the valley, learn from one another, and bridge the gap between their worlds. Mark felt a new sense of hope and determination. He knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, but he was ready to face them. With Lyra by his side, he believed that they could create a future that honored both the desert and his home. Together, they would choose a path that united their worlds, filled with adventure, friendship, and the promise of discovery. As they looked out over the shimmering waters of the oasis, Mark knew that this was just the beginning of their journey, one that would change their lives forever.